Hello everybody, how are you doing today? My name is Michael, and we're going to continue this little walkthrough by talking about the hub area in this episode. We're not going to get into the first level yet. This is just the main town where we spend most of our time in the game. And I actually think this looks gorgeous, this area here, but I'm partial to the ocean, and I love the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. I really enjoy it. This area actually kind of reminds me in a way of these ruined Irish monasteries from the Middle Ages that were placed on tiny little islands way out at sea that you could barely live on, and I kind of like this. It sort of symbolically represents, because they're sort of out here dangling over the edge of this abyss, that the undead in this world is sort of collapsing and over and could easily be destroyed at any moment. We're going to be spending a lot of our time wandering around ruins, and this game, and especially Dark Souls 1, gives the image of playing in a time where the main story is sort of over, where the big events in world history have already happened, and you're sort of an archaeologist that's wandering around trying to explore them. And I think that's just an amazing part of this series, because I love history, I love archaeology. And to get the feeling not just to fight monsters, but also to explore a ruined world is just something that I find amazing. Now remember what I said about looking around and keeping observant about what's around you. I discovered this little area when I first came and started playing this game because I played it more often, because I played Dark Souls 1 quite a bit, and so I knew to look for something like this. And there's something like this in Dark Souls 1 hidden behind an elevator shaft. Yeah, there's a little secret area you can jump down to here. The Dark Souls games have a reputation of being very, very difficult, but I don't think it's mentioned too often how much they give you in each episode, or each game rather, how much they hand to you right at the beginning, especially in Dark Souls 1. They give you a ton of stuff in the main area. In Demon Souls, much less. You're really more out on your ass in Demon Souls than in these games. But in Dark Souls 2, they do give you a fair amount as well. We picked up a Morning Star and a Cleric's Chime. The chime is what you use to cast divine magic in this game. It sort of makes kind of a bell sound, usually, if you hear it there. You can kind of punch with it, too. I don't have the faith to use this, but that's how you cast divine magic. The other thing we got is going to replace our dagger, and it is a Morning Star. The Morning Star is a historical weapon. This really existed, and I never noticed this before, but if you look really closely at it, you can see blood stains amid the spikes. This weapon was used during the Middle Ages, and it is a fearsome-looking thing that just looks horrifying if you hit it against unarmored flesh. Sorry about that little cut there. I kind of had to go do something. Alright, and it just looks like a fearsome weapon. It just looks so brutal and savage. I think it looks fantastic. I think that the Morning Star, like the mace, was used more to crush and bash through armor and break bones because you couldn't pierce through the armor that a heavy knight would have. This is a great starting weapon for a lot of classes if you started with a lackluster beginning weapon, or if you just want to look kind of brutal. I think it looks very good. It has. And this is where we're going to talk about something else with the weapons. Let's look at the weapon screen a little more closely. It says we need 15 strength to use this one-handed. However, if you two-hand the weapon with the Y button, you get a bonus to how much your strength goes towards using the weapon. So if you have a weapon that looks like you can't use, try to two-hand it and see what you can, if you have enough strength doing that. You would have to forego a shield, obviously, though. And we do need 7 dex to use it, which we have. Let's look below the strength, the requirements, which are in yellow, to these things which are in green. What is this? What is the attribute bonus? Well, this is about scaling. And this is very important. I did not understand this in my first playthrough of Dark Souls 1, what scaling meant for a while. An embarrassing number of hours before I figured it out. But your weapons in this game have not just their basic damage, as you see there, it says 110 under the damage section, 110. It says plus 34. What does that mean, that plus 34? Well, many weapons in the game, most of them actually, have what's known as scaling damage. This means that you get a bonus to how much damage your weapon does based on certain attributes. For instance, there's strength and dex at the beginning, which is the primary amount of scaling you're going to get for most weapons, and also some for magic, fire, and lightning. Dark, lightning, and fire are all affected by intelligence and faith. So if you have high intelligence or faith, you're going to get a bonus to all three of these things. Now, this was actually better in this game than it was in Dark Souls 1, when you really didn't get any extra bonus for scaling for fire or lightning. That was just an additional amount of damage you did. I think it works better in the game to give faith and intelligence characters a bit of extra damage by including that in there. And magic is just for intelligence. Dark, by the way, it scales with a combination of faith and intelligence. That's how dark and dark attributes work in this game. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what the dark and what hexing is in that path in the game a bit later on when we meet somebody in another episode. But you're probably not going to have to worry about that right away, even if you start out as a hexer, or with the designs of becoming a hexer. Let's look at this shield now. As you can see, we have the standard stuff, the requirements you need to use it, and below it the attribute bonus you get if you attack with it. That one's kind of weird for a shield, though. You can fight with a shield, but it's not recommended. It's kind of rare that you do that. And here we have the standard stuff. Physical attack if you hit someone. This stuff isn't that important, however, for the shields, really. But let's look at this. Damage reduction. And what does this mean? Well, you have to look at, and this screen looks kind of complicated, admittedly, at first, because it just looks kind of confusing. What does all this stuff mean? All of this stuff about damage reduction and magic and fire and all this. First, with a shield, just ignore this entire first line. It's not important for most of the time. You have to look at this section, this second section right here. At the top, it says physical damage reduction. And it says only 85 out of 100. So you only have 85% damage reduction on this shield, which means that even if you successfully block an attack, that 15% of that damage is still going to strike you. So you're still going to, if attack damage was 100, you're still going to take 15 hit points of damage, which is pretty unfortunate for this shield. You really want to find a shield with 100% physical damage reduction. Most of the shields in Dark Souls 1 had that, which makes it a little strange to me that they would change it. In this game, they deliberately made more weapons with less than 100% physical damage reduction. So as quickly as you can, you're going to want to find one. And we can find a really good one in the first area. And lower here we have magic, fire, lightning, and dark. And this is representing how much damage reduction you would get from all of those attacks. So only 30% of a magic attack would get deflected, so that's not very good. 65 on lightning and fire is pretty darn good, and only 50% on dark. But dark is kind of rare. We don't have to worry about that one too much. Now, breezing by this stuff, which I'm going to talk about in another episode, the conditions your character can get into, let's look at this, stability. Stability represents how much your weapon can physically withstand and without... well, hold on, let me start again. Stability represents how much endurance is wiped away with each successful swing that an enemy makes against your shield. And so a higher stability, which would mean that less endurance is ripped away from you when you're attacked. So, for instance, 45 is actually a fairly low stability, so quite a bit of my endurance is going to be ripped away with this. Bigger, heavier shields obviously have higher stability, and so that is preferable, and you're going to want a shield with higher stability than this. This isn't terribly good, to be honest. And I really think that the shields in general were done best in Dark Souls 1, because you really felt like you could take a significant number of hits, whereas in this game, enemies seem to be able to overwhelm you with hits, even if you have a fairly high stability shield, so it behooves you to learn how to fight two-handed with a big heavy weapon. Not that you necessarily need to do that, it's just something you can do, and shields are less effective in this game than they were in DS1, unfortunately. And here we have the bane of my existence, the durability stat. This is on all weapons and armor, and it says, see here, 80 out of 80. What this means is fairly standard RPG fare. You can use a weapon only a certain amount of times before it breaks, and it will gradually wear down durability. Tragically, though, in this game, the durability is ridiculously low. It is ludicrously low. In the other games, you could hack away happily for hours without really worrying about your durability, except for a tiny number of easily breakable weapons. And they were very, very rare. You know, things like katanas that had thin blades. It seemed plausible that they could break. However, in this game, just like those fricking weapons in Silent Hill Downpour, among other games, break with a ludicrous amount of ease. This big, heavy iron or steel Morning Star, this Morgenstern, as it's known in German, should not be able to break that easily, even if I'm bashing it against heavy armor. It's ridiculous that it would break that quickly. And you're going to have to keep an eye out on your weapons to make sure that they do not break. Armor and shields typically will not, but weapon durability, that goes down quite a bit. I mean, it happens so quickly that you really should end up keeping, after a while, for playing for a few hours, a backup weapon in your among your items, just to make sure that you have something there in case that one breaks. It is a horrible design decision. I hate it. Most people that play Dark Souls hate it. And you just had to worry about repairing it when you got to your checkpoint at the bonfire, and it was not a big deal. Some people say they don't like it and they prefer it this way, but those people are insane, and I feel for them. And at the very bottom of all of these items is the weight. And you're going to need to make sure you know what the weight is to make sure that you do not have overburden and fat rolling. Unless you want to have a challenge, but, you know, why would you do that? I forgot to mention in the last video, because it was dragging on quite a bit, these rings that I got. Now, this ring, the stone ring, is about reducing enemy poise, and I haven't actually talked about poise yet because I don't really want to, because it doesn't really exist in this game. Theoretically, poise, at least in Dark Souls 1, is how much force needs to be applied to your character in order to get them to stagger, that is, to interrupt their action, whether it's attacking or casting a spell or running or using an item. The amount of poise that you have determines how heavy or the significant number of swings you would have to take before you're stopped from taking an action. And in Dark Souls 1, this worked beautifully, because in that game you would need to balance whether you'd want to have heavier armor if you had a big, slow, heavy weapon. And we'll talk about how quickly the big weapons can be attacked with in this game, and that's another topic. But you had to balance how much poise you needed in order to swing those heavy weapons and not be interrupted in your attack. In this game, however, poise really does not exist for the most part. It seems random, it doesn't make sense, and you can be stunned repeatedly in the middle of your attack by the tiniest of weapons. Or even if you're wearing big, heavy armor, then in Dark Souls 1 it would have taken a giant weapon in order to stagger you. And this ring is mostly useless, because, like I said, there really is no poise. This other ring that I have here is sort of weird. I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to talk more about this when I do my talk about PvP. But really what this thing is supposed to do is make you look like a friendly other player in multiplayer, and you can trick people even if you're trying to attack and kill them by pretending to be a nice guy. I think this ring is mostly useless because I don't do a lot of PvP. Let's take a look at this weapon and talk about it. Yeah. Did anybody notice anything there? You know, anything about it looking ridiculous? Now this weapon, let's look at the regular R1. What in the world is that? It's like a tennis racket being swung. And no, I don't care if this is how it really was used in life. I don't know anything about medieval swordsmanship, and it's just ridiculous that it has this moveset. It makes no sense. The R2s, the heavy attacks, look good, but these weapons in Demons and Dark Souls were done much more plausibly because they were big, heavy weapons that it took quite a lot to swing, and if you missed, you were kind of overbalanced at the end of it, and you were not staggered, but you were kind of off balance or flat-footed for a moment if you swung and missed. But in this game, they look elegant almost. It's kind of ridiculous. Now, this isn't a bad swing set. In fact, it's actually a really good one. It's just it doesn't make any sense for this weapon. Yeah, okay, we're going to move on now. Smithers, would you pass me my binoculars? Now, these binoculars have made an appearance in all 3 games, although they were called spy glasses in Demon Souls. A spyglass in Demon Souls, like a pirate would have. And what this is just for getting a close-up view of something nearby. It's just, like actual binoculars. It really doesn't have much of a purpose. Theoretically, you can use this in order to aim spells without targeting an enemy. Like if you looked at a certain point and then pulled back and then switched over to your catalyst, you can use it to aim a spell up at there where you were looking. But it's kind of iffy, it's kind of chancy, and I don't really use it too often. A much better thing you could use it for is to get a close-up look at people's faces, which you can't usually see with the camera in this game. That guy looks a little green around the gills. I'm sorry for that. He's our blacksmith, Lendegrass.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Just help me open this door.
And he's kind of a dick.
I packed my tools in here. See, it was vacant.
Obviously. Fine.
But now somebody's gone and locked the door.
Okay, well, climb in. Lazy jerk. Come on, you can't get in there. That's ridiculous.
Right, bring me that key. Chop, chop.
Excuse me? What did you say? If we didn't need this guy, I would be so pissed off at him. And here's our checkpoint for this area. And now you'll see if we go to the travel section, we can now warp between bonfires. This was a huge change between Dark Souls 1 and 2, and one I'm not really happy about, because the previous game was a much tighter experience, and everything was linked together beautifully. So you could travel between one area to another, and it was much more simple and logical. In this game, though, it's much more like a long hallway leading from point A to point B that you can't circle around in once you get there. That's part of the decline in level design that this game had compared to Demon Souls and Dark Souls, which I'm going to be talking about when we actually go into the other levels. But first we have to talk to this Irish lady down here. Let's get a look at her face, actually. There she is. Can't quite see her eyes. Okay, fine. Let's talk to her.
Are you the next martyr?
What, of this shithole? I don't think so.
Or merely a pawn of fate? Bearer of the curse, I will remain by your side till this frail hope shatters.
There's a dagger there. I don't know if you can see it
Take this with
hanging
you.
there.
May it ease your journey.
This is the Estus Flask, the potion, the healing potion essentially we were talking about before. You only get one of them to start, but you get a max of 12 by the end of the game.
He who made Drangleic what it once was. He who peered at the essence of the soul.
That's the king's castle up there, that black spire. We're kind of getting our goal for the game now. What our goal essentially is to meet the king for some reason. I mean, I don't know if that's enough for everybody, but it wasn't for me. That's kind of weird. Also, I have to point out, we can't get her freaking armor. If I was playing a female, like, witch or sorcerer type character, I would love this armor. Why can't I get it? It don't make no sense.
Bearer of the curse, seek misery.
Everybody's here is pretty miserable. I think I found it.
Misery will lead you to greater, stronger souls. You will never meet the king with a soul so frail and pallid.
Actually I can. You can go there at level 1 even, if you want.
Seek those whose names are unutterable.
I can utter them.
The four endowed with immense souls.
Ooh, immense endowment. Tell me more.
Their souls will serve as beacons. Once you have found them, return here to me,
Imagine going up to a person and doing this.
so that hope will
It's like looking at them with Google Glass. It's so obnoxious. Oh, I told him to Tom. I think I
Bearer
will.
of the curse. Seek souls, larger, more powerful.
Oh, for God's sakes, just let me level up, woman.
Seek the king. That is the only
Oh,
way.
good lord.
Lest this land swallow you whole, as it has so many others.
Okay, now we can level up. This is another obnoxious change that we did, that the game did. It is so annoying that they are forcing you to come back to this area and go through a loading screen just to level up. When in Dark Souls 1, you can level up, at any checkpoint, at any bonfire. It makes no sense. It's similar to the one in Demon Souls, but because you leveled up so frequently right after you killed a boss and had to go back to the Nexus, essentially, well, you didn't have to, but you probably should. It made more sense there. I'm just going to get a little more endurance, because that is very important. See that feather? See that? Miss it? Now, she was essentially giving us our goal for this game, which is to find the 4 great souls. In Dark Souls 1, the culmination of the game was to attack and bring and gain the souls of the 4 great ones, the 4 Lord souls of the most powerful people in the land aside from the king. However, in this game, you actually have to get the 4 Lord souls at the beginning and then find the king, and then continue on with the remaining 50% of the game. It's kind of strange. And we get some life gems, very nice, and a hard soul, very good. You can pop those hard souls whenever you want if you want to get some extra points to try to level up or buy something, but I tend to save them. You know, for when I really need them. If I need a few extra souls to make a purchase. And we gotta talk to another miserable jerk over here. The crestfallen warrior.
You're undead, aren't you?
Yes, everyone is undead around here. Do I smell? I guess the zombies would smell, but Jesus. Let's say I smell.
Is Majula.
Yeah, I know.
It is a kind of settlement. A place where life is lost
That aqueduct is towards the end of the game.
and traveling these days. There are very few places like that. I am Solden. And like you, I lost everything. And now I'm here.
The crestfallen warrior is a character in all 3 Dark Souls games. And he's sort of he's not very useful. Really all that he's there to do is to, ooh, that's the 2nd level down there. The Tower of Hyde, you can see it from here. And he's meant to sort of represent, like be a warning to the player. Like, don't become this guy who just gives up. And he's someone who's he's a little like DJ Bobby Ricks, actually, from Silent Hill Downpour. Who's somebody who's just like, if they were presented with the option of playing this game and getting out, that he just gave up and decided to sit around and mope. I don't usually even bother talking to this guy, but I will just to show you that there is something you can get here, a ring.
Much about souls. Even I'm not certain, but I'm told that the soul is the essence of life itself.
What does that mean, Solden?
Anything living, sentient or no, supposedly has one. What we call
Really?
the
Even rats have souls? Oh, yes, they do.
to the soul. Do you
What about
see
cicadas?
what
Do they have souls?
To be alive, to walk this earth. That's the real curse, right there.
Solden just dropped a pretty big
Undead.
storyline thing here. What's interesting about the Souls games is that
Quite unpredictable.
you're fighting in order to die, which, maybe I'm reading too much into this, and feel free to call me a weeaboo, whatever the fuck you want to say, but I really think that there's a big part of Eastern mythology there. The idea not that we're trying to reach heaven or do something great or noble, that we're trying to escape the cycle of life itself, seems to have some very obvious Buddhist parables that you can find there, of trying to break the cycle of birth and rebirth in Hinduism and Buddhism. But again, feel free to say I'm reading too much into that, but that seems to be what we're doing. And one of the things that makes this game so unique, you're not fighting to live or survive against an onslaught, you're fighting for annihilation.
There are all beings in this land with giant souls.
Yes, I know.
And wherever you go from here, you'll sooner or later come up against them. Each has a powerful soul and a terrible curse.
What curse exactly?
If that frightens you, then you ought to just give up right now. Like I have.
That seems a little bit too obvious. In the other games, he was a lot less
Do you ever
overblown with his, saying, "Hey, you want to give up, baby, or give up?" I know.
You'll face invaders from other worlds at every turn.
Well, I'm offline right now, but fine.
If you need help, why not proclaim faith in the Blue Sentinel?
Probably the most useless covenant of the game.
When you face danger, the Blue Sentinels will come to your aid. Protection is yours, if you wish. You need only accept their kind embrace.
Nobody embraces me without dinner and a movie first. I'm going to talk a lot more about covenants at another time, but what a covenant is, and you'll see that blue up in the upper left corner by my health bar. What a covenant essentially is the... It's kind of complicated to say, because they weren't done very well, really, in any of the games. But a covenant is sort of a contract that you make with certain groups in the game to facilitate PvP, mostly, to access different areas, to gain new things, mostly related to, like I said, to multiplayer. So if you're playing offline, you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to put on this ring now. It gives me a little bit of a boost to health. But it's so small that it seems barely negligible. I mean, look at that tiny little thing. That's ridiculous, how little health that gives me. And what the covenants do, essentially, and I'm going to talk, it's easier to talk about them one at a time than all together, but what they do is make it so you can access mostly new multiplayer stuff. I think all of them except one are about multiplayer, I think. And what the Blue Sentinels one does was a cool idea, but it failed utterly and does not work. What this does is if you are in this covenant, and I think you have to wear the ring also for this to work, and you are invaded, that is, you are attacked in multiplayer by another player, then they will summon in people from another covenant that will help you, that is about assisting players that are in need in order to help you and fight off the invader that's trying to kill you. But I'll talk more about that when I talk about PvP in another episode. It's getting a little bit too complicated. Bottom line is that this covenant is not terribly useful, and this seal is not really that useful either. But I decided to show it anyway. Let's head in here. And I might have to go for a cut here. Sorry about that. Now, let's continue on with this guy. First of all, though, let's listen to the music a little bit in this area. Yeah, I don't like the music. It's okay, but I instantly thought it sounded a little like Harry Potter to me, which is not right for this game. It's sort of, it's a little too silly with those tinkling sounds of the bells. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it doesn't really work. And it's done by the same guy who did the soundtrack to Dark Souls 1, which was one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in any video game. And especially the Firelink Shrine theme, the hub theme for that game was amazing. But it had a sort of grinding, miserable sense of somebody who was just brutally fighting against impossible odds and just going on forever, endlessly, in this horrifying world. Whereas this one is just sort of generically kind of maudlin and sad. Speaking of maudlin, let's talk to Moglin, the Armorer, here. He is yet another sad sack that we're talking to, and he has a ridiculous hat on.
Hello there. Welcome to my shop. I'm Morley.
He's lacking in confidence, and looks pretty depressed.
Sorry, please do have a look at my wares. I could really use the business.
You have this big shop here. I mean, nobody's going to kick you out. There's no taxes in the undead world. And he is your go-to guy for armor. He's not the only place you can get armor in the game, but this is where you're going to pick up armor for bosses, once you defeat them in some cases. And, yeah, that's what you're going to find. He also sells 3 shields. One of them is the shield that I'm using right now. The other is the Silver Kite Shield, the Silver Eagle Kite Shield, which is actually pretty darn good. This is a good early game shield, although it's a little expensive, and you can find another shield quickly, which I'm going to show you. And here we have, this is going to surprise players of Dark Souls 1, the Eagle Shield. Yeah, I know it says the Twin Dragon Great Shield, but that's not what this is. It's the Eagle Shield, essentially. It looks like it. It has more or less the same stat requirements. I think the Eagle Shield is 18 strength, but it's a little higher. This is a Tower Shield, or a Great Shield. And what it is, a Great Shield is a weapon where you sacrifice the ability to parry in order for increased stability. These are big, heavy shields that in real life would have covered you from chin to toe. You know, it's like carrying a wooden wall in front of you. And these are really good for strength characters. They're good for characters that use spears. They're generally just very useful. And this one especially is very useful because it has very reasonable stat requirements at 20 strength. A lot of characters in the game can use this, especially in DS2, because as we all know, there's a little bit too much leeway when it comes to your stat allocation. You can get a little too much in the way of stats in this game. The armor here is pretty useless. Just an armor of an early game enemy that will probably get in drops later on. My armor that the warrior class starts with. And the falconer armor, which looks kind of silly and it's not terribly good. And they're cowards, apparently, these people. Yeah. Or rather, the Volgan soldiers were cowardly and these guys were hired to fight. Although, I'm not fond of these falconers. Anyway. So this is a good place. That Eagle Shield can be very useful, and if you're early in the game and trying to parry, it's very difficult. You may want to use it anyway. Although there is a pretty hefty weight requirement for Great Shield. That's 7, compared to just a few pounds for these. You essentially double or more the weight that you're going to get.
Well, I do hope I see you again.
Yeah. Alright, we'll see you again. But I am going to rob you, Mogwin. It's nothing personal, but I am going to do that. I hope you don't hold it against me. He doesn't. He doesn't notice. This isn't an Elder Scrolls game where they notice that you rob people. Let's take a look at that. Titanite Shard. This is what we use to upgrade our equipment. All of the normal equipment in the game can be upgraded from its base level to plus 10, and it's going to gain damage and scaling in many cases between those upgrades. Not all of them increase scaling, but quite a few of them do. For instance, this B scaling on this Morningstar might get up to an A. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that. But you're going to be getting all kinds of upgrade material, but this is the basic one that you're going to get at the beginning of the game. Hold on. Let's see if I can leap over this. And I can. Continuing on, this is a pit, obviously. It is abysmal. Well, okay, it's not abysmal. There's a bottom to it, but we can't reach it right away. And I do not believe there is any way to get down there right away at the start of the game. You have to wait until later on when you get a special ring that allows you to do that. I don't think even with much higher health I can jump down there without dying to the first one. So let's move along here. Let's punch this. There's a rock here. I got lucky and found this right at the start of the game, but some people have played the entire game and not noticed it, and I've done that with other items myself. Estus Flask Shard. Well, what does that do? Well, let's go back to the Emerald Herald. We can give her the Estus Flask Shard and get another Estus Flask. So instead of 1, we're going to have 2, which is very handy. Oops-a-daisy. All right. The Shard of an Estus Flask. Shards are deeply soaked in Estus. Graft the shard to an Estus Flask to increase flask uses. Over the ages, countless souls rested their bones as they drank from the original flask. So there's only 1 at the beginning? And now the shard remains, serving as a vestige of their hopes and dreams.
Bearer of the curse.
Yep. That's another criticism that this game has, is that you have to go through that dialogue every time you talk to her. But you had to do that with a lot of people in Demon Souls as well. So the people in the Demon Souls High Horse, remember that you had to do a lot of unnecessary talking. Like you had to talk to the blacksmith and he'd give you a little spiel almost every time you frickin' spoke to him. So that game had problems with that too. And we give her the shard, make a little prayer sign, and now we have 2 Estus Flasks, which is very nice. Let's head back over there. We have one more person to talk to in this area. And she is very interesting. Just a life gem. Where is she? Hey lady, come out here. Wait a minute. It's the cat. Yep, there's a talking cat.
I'm dead, Ollie.
Did Haruhi Suzumiya write this or something?
One without much time remaining. Just about ready to fall apart, I'd say.
Don't be a dick.
Not exactly the time to be chatting with a cat. Well, suit yourself. Oh yes. You may call me Sharpwa. Enchanté.
That enchanté, or enchanted, has led people to believe that maybe this is not a real magical cat, but that she is a wizard that has transformed herself for whatever reason. Maybe she just got bored and became a cat. There's some useful items in here, but we can't afford any of them right away. This is the ring I was talking about before that reduces the falling damage that allows us to get down there at the bottom. Still lose quite a bit of health on that first jump, though. This is a useless ring. Do not get it. We can pick it up later. This ring is used in PvP. It's used to make the enemies attack you, so you can protect the host if the host is having trouble. This is the name engraved ring, which allows you to connect with friends a little bit easier. It makes you, well, we'll talk about that when I talk about PvP. Ring of Whispers is not useful right now. That is for later. None of these items are especially useful right at the start. Prism stones drop a little golden gem on the ground, and they're not useful, I think, at all in this game. They were useful in the first game because there were a couple of maze-like areas, and you could get lost pretty easily, especially in Stonefang Tunnel Part 2. But now they're not terribly useful in this game, or even in the first game. Alluring skulls are also not useful. What this is it sort of gives a fake little soul symbol, as if it's an item lying on the ground, and it will cause some enemies to bolt towards it. In other words, running away from you, so you can attack them while they're looking at it, or make a quick escape. This is not really useful except for one boss fight much later on in the game. Lloyd's talismans are not terribly useful until we start encountering mimics, but we'll talk about that much later. Lloyd's talismans can be used to stop someone from using their Estus Flask in the middle of combat, which can be useful during PvP, but they also have a life gem, so is it really that useful? I don't know. Homeward Bones are items that you can use to teleport from wherever you are back to the checkpoint area that you were at. We don't really need to buy these now because we can pick up a couple in a few seconds in another part of Majula. If you look closely at the bonfire, it kind of looks like a sword is sticking out at the top, but that's not actually a sword. It's actually a human bone sticking out at the top, and there's sort of a pile of skulls or some sort of skeletal remains at the bottom. So it's pretty grisly that this last remnant of hope and light in your life is actually some hideous grisly pile of human remains, and that is mysteriously always on fire. So that's why they call it a homeward bone. Let's check up here. This area looks okay, but it's not a patch on Firelink Shrine. That area looked amazing, and the music really helps me dislike this quite a bit. I mean, I don't hate it or anything, it's just compared to Firelink, it's not much at all. Here are the bones. 5 homeward bones, I thought it was 3. This is a major, major troll action by the game. This is another covenant that you can enter called the Covenant of Champions. Do not enter this covenant. I entered this covenant for maybe an hour before I realized what had happened in the game very early on. What this does is actually makes the game harder. It makes the enemies tougher. Yeah, they're already pretty tough at the beginning, but it offers a chance for you to make the enemies more difficult. And what this does is eventually leads you to getting a special item that allows you to wield your bare fists with mighty kung fu fury and do a significant amount of damage with them. I'll talk more about that covenant later, but suffice to say for now, don't join it if you're having trouble with the game. That's really for experienced players. This isn't the way to the first area, but I just wanted to quickly run down here to show everyone that you can get a shield early on at the beginning of this. What's down there? An item. We can't get down there yet, though. And it's not a great shield, but it's a shield of some kind, so, you know, you might as well use it, right? The Crimson Shield, I think it's called. This is the way to the second area of the game. It's not really harder than the first area, but I think it's just better policy to go to the first one. The Crimson Parma. The Crimson Parma is, I think, worse than the shield we have now, right? Yeah, considerably. But if you don't have a shield at the beginning, it's a good way to start. So I think that just about wraps it up for our talk about Majula. There's a lot more to talk about, of course, throughout this game, but that's probably, as soon as I get out of here back into the sunlight, I'm going to end it there. In our next episode, we're going to be going to the first area of the game, the Forest of Fallen Giants. We're probably going to have to spend a couple of episodes there, but that'll be all for now.